So, good morning, everyone, and thank you, really, thank you for coming. I'm really happy to see everybody here, and I'm going to talk a little bit today about our survey, but first I want to say last night we were at a GITE Awards dinner, and we got to hear about the Green Enterprise IT Awards for 2013, and it was really great to have all these case studies and new faces in the crowd, and I really want to recommend that you take some time today and seek them out, because they're going to be giving their case studies today and later in the week, and I just want to give a plug for those sessions. So I'm here to talk about the annual data center industry survey results. We collect these results over the months leading up to symposium by email. If you participated in this survey, I want to offer my sincerest thanks. It takes a commitment, it takes time. You all have busy schedules. The fact that you're able to contribute to this is really important. I appreciate it. It's about 1,000 respondents and users. North America is very heavily represented, and these are, in large part, large data center operators, folks that are managing more than one site. A few more words about the demographics. As we mentioned, North America is really heavily represented in this survey, and it has been historically. But I wanted to mention that there are versions of this survey still in the field in translation, Portuguese, Spanish, Chinese, Russian. So we're making a concerted effort to gather more global responses, and those responses are going to be included in the final document, which will be later next month. It will be available. The makeup of who takes this survey, it is, by and large, facilities managers. We've got a growing number of IT managers who take this survey, and 20% there, 21% on the executive level. The other kind of mix I'm going to point out here is the enterprise versus third party. Who is the vertical industry taking this survey? And kind of how I define enterprise versus third party in this survey is if you're third party, that means either hosting, multi-tenant data center, cloud. If you provide what we define as digital infrastructure as a service, you're a third party. If you don't, you're enterprise. So if you're the traditional, retail, financial, healthcare, enterprise. So that's going to be one of the lenses I want to look at this data through today. So the data center space is growing. 70% of data center operators have built a new site or renovated, major renovations in the last 5 years. This doesn't actually vary that much from geography to vertical industry. Everybody has grown some. Despite a slow economic downturn, the demand for IT capacity isn't slowing down. How much does it cost? How much do you think it costs to build a new data center? We had some numbers that we've been working with, and I got to say, in some cases, I feel like this survey is representative of 1,000 people. This is great data. We've vetted it, we've looked at it, and sometimes stuff just jumps up and kind of surprises us, right? So let me get this number up here. Nearly half the respondents say that they're paying less than $1 million per megawatt. That number kind of caught us off guard. This is the first time we've asked this question. There's no accounting for tier level. There's no accounting for local currency. But we thought this was a really interesting answer, and I just wanted to present it here. When Chris Crosby, CEO of Compass Data Centers, saw this in the preliminary data, he said to me, if this number is true, there would be no third-party data center service, because everybody could just go buy cheap data centers. So we're going to work a little more to tell you what this number means, I think, kind of as we digest this data and consider it. What it does show, that we haven't done this year over year, but talking to the staff about deployments, there are more sophisticated users, and there are kind of increasingly things like phase construction, modular construction, basically smarter deployments that may be driving this cost down from what it was a few years ago. But data center budgets are expanding overall. There's a lot of spending, especially in kind of the growing market. So Latin America and Asia, this is expanding over 10% year over year. That's big budget growth. And it slows down in North America and EMEA, but that's still significant data center budget expansion. But the budget growth is somewhat lopsided. How many people here in the audience are enterprise? Can I just get a show of hands here, an enterprise data center operator? Okay. That budget growth is coming out of your budget. Look, if you can look at this slide, when you separate out the enterprise data center growth versus the third-party data center, you can see, especially on the right there, the third-party data centers are just huge growth. And if you follow the money, as we're saying here with this survey, if you follow the money, a lot more budget is going into the third party. And to a certain extent, that may be at the expense of enterprise operators. So more enterprises who have traditionally managed and operated their own sites are, and we have surveys to back this up as well, are partially or wholesale going into third-party engagements to either supplement or replace their in-house data centers. Why that is, we're going to get into later, and we'll talk about it a little more throughout the day. But I want to show this slide. You cut out North America, nearly a quarter of the folks who responded to our survey are seeing budget cuts. And we talked about this week when I've been putting this together. The wolf is at the door, right? As an enterprise data center operator, you're seeing budget cuts. You have in the past had the playing field has been unlevel in your favor. The default is to manage your own site, host your own site, run your own site. Whereas now the playing field has shifted a bit, and the onus is on you as the enterprise operator to prove that a new in-house data center build is in the best interest of your company. And a lot of folks in the enterprise space today are going up against senior executives at the third-party firms who track data center cost, performance metrics for a living. They build out data center space on a very global scale, regularly doing it. And this is one of the challenges that the enterprise users face. It's one of the things we're going to talk about today. Through Hank Cedar, later this morning, is going to have a fairly controversial, I think, session where we're going to talk about tracking data center costs is your job. Hank is going to have a very good commentary on that. And this also plays into what we've talked about through our forces methodology, making the best decision possible for your next data center space. Is it in-house? Is it outsourced in the third party? And I say forces isn't programmed to make a decision, an emotional decision. This is to make the best decision for your company. So that's the kind of concept behind forces. But what we're asking you in the enterprise is to really kind of become more engaged in reporting your cost and performance, because the third party may not be the best decision for your organization. So as a practitioner, becoming more engaged in understanding the cost and the performance is going to be really important. And we don't see this as doomsday. It's a different day. And if you want to survive in the enterprise, you have to adapt. So this is what I'm talking about a minute ago when I was saying cost and performance metrics. And you can see here enterprise versus what the third party is doing. You can see the third party data center operators are consistently reporting their cost metrics, their performance metrics to the C-level execs, because running the data center is their business. Running it effectively is their business, and it should be yours. When you look at the slide, I'm just kind of pulling all together here. 40% of enterprise data center operators have no scheduled reporting to the C-level. So when your C-level executives are making these kind of large decisions about data center deployment, they are looking at a vacuum of data. And I can tell you the third party has that data. So that's one of the recurring themes and recurring topics that we're going to talk to you about throughout this week is helping you get that data and communicating it effectively. So let's shift gears here to data center energy issues. On this slide, you can see from 70% to 50%. A lot of folks think that reducing data center energy consumption is very important, and this kind of the variance there is mostly, I would say, due to the variance in global prices of energy. Now, while a lot of folks think that data center energy consumption is very important, almost no one has their financial incentives organized in a way to make a big difference, to make a big dent. Only 16% of IT departments paying the power bill. That number, I've been talking about it year over year. Mr. Ken Brill has been talking about this number long before I was. And basically, if the facilities team is paying the power bill, they are the ones with the incentive to make changes. They're the ones that make the improvements. And by and large, they have made a lot of changes and improvements. But unless the IT department is incentivized to really do kind of the hard work, when we talk about PUE, we need to work on the left side of the decimal. We need to work on reducing the IT load. Because for the facilities teams, they've really gone to work. They've done it. And if you're not operating your data center facilities efficiently at this point, you're not going to be operating them for much longer. The data center facility staff have really done a great job over the last several years. And now it's time to shift that onus over to IT. And some of the things that we're going to be talking about this week are ways to do that, way to bridge that gap and to get people motivated to do something about that power cost. Like our Server Roundup award winners and finalists. Those are folks who are doing it. They're fixing the problem on the left side of the decimal on PUE. Why do it? It's pretty straightforward. It's money. You can save significant money. If you talk to the folks at AOL or Barclays or the people who've participated in the Guide Awards, these people are saving significant money. So there is a great incentive to going out and fixing the problem with your inefficient IT. I want to go back to talk a little bit about PUE because it's someplace that a lot of people are focused. And when you look at this slide, people managing over 5,000 servers, 90% of them are focused on PUE. They're laser focused on PUE. Much less so for the smaller organizations. And then the third party, 90%. And that's all really they have to worry about, right? If you're in the third party space, you're providing the data center. Yes, perfect, track that PUE. But we need folks to get more engaged on the IT side. Now, one of the things that we saw that kind of jumped out this year as a kind of an interesting side note is the amount of people who say they're pursuing some type of green certification. We asked people, are you tracking carbon in your data center? That actually went down a little bit. When we ask, are you pursuing LEED, Energy Star, Code of Conduct? Big jump, 48 to 50%. And then when you look at the largest companies, nearly 80%, that's a huge number of companies that are pursuing a LEED or Energy Star. So while we hope that those are achieving their business's goals to pursue those things, we'd like to see the same effort put in on reducing the inefficiency in the IT side. So why are people, who's able to do this thing with the LEED and improving PUE and that kind of thing? Who or why are companies doing it? And it's the largest companies. And I can tell you a little bit about why. It's the folks that are managing over 5,000 servers. They have the staff resources to do it. And they have the financial drivers to do it. These are the things that make green IT possible, because a lot of the technologies have some inherent risk, right? So you need to have the staff expertise on hand to make some of these things work. I'm going to show you this slide. It may be a little hard to read. You can download it in a week or two. But I want to just show you some of the kind of different technology adoptions by the largest companies and then the smaller companies, what the just kind of dramatic differences. So for airflow, isolation, containment, raising inlet air temps, using stuff like air side economization, water side economization, nearly double in every category by the largest companies, because doing these things, it has inherent risk. So you can see kind of the bifurcation of the industry on who is pursuing and adopting the most efficient technologies on the facility side. And now I want to jump into a few kind of newer technology areas, kind of things that are slightly disruptive, and I think it would be a nice segue into the upcoming session by our friend Andy Lawrence here. And the following slide may be the most controversial slide I have in my deck, even more controversial than the wolves at the door. The slide I'm about to show you. So here we go. Is DCIM adoption going through the roof? 38% installed. I tell Andy, and we show him these numbers every year. Andy says, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. 38% say they have DCIM installed. And he says, those vendors, they wish they had 38% installed. It's not happening. But we asked the survey. This is the data we've collected. And when you talk to people, I haven't met that many people who don't have some kind of system installed. So I think this number's credible, but if you don't like my number, you can go talk to Andy. So DCIM adoption, we think it's grown significantly over the last year-over-year and poised to grow more. And we have sessions throughout this week talking about how to buy it smartly, how to implement it smartly, because it's not just the kind of thing you can just buy and hope for the best. So why are people buying DCIM? Number one driver by far and away, capacity planning. All these other reasons, tertiary, nice to haves. People are buying DCIM because they hope it will help them with capacity planning. Capacity planning mistakes can be very expensive. It's kind of the black art, right? People are hoping this will help with that, and we're hoping they're right. That's our commentary there. Now I want to just talk briefly about another kind of technology that's been on the radar the last year or two, the modular data center market. We had the big modular campus last year. If you can see from this slide, the market's pretty open, right? They're open to modular data centers, somewhat confident, sure. There's only 21% who say, I'm not confident in that. But it doesn't match up with what's happening. So over half of people say no interest in modular data centers. That number jumped from last year. It's higher. And the adoption numbers are the exact same as last year, 9%. Still in single digits for prefab modular data center adoption. That number shocked us. What I would say is this market is patchy, right? So the adoption of modular data centers are not for everybody, and we're not saying it won't grow. We're saying that currently it is not growing. So this is kind of where the modular section ends. I just want to give you some takeaways to consider before we open up some questions. In summary, the wolf is at the door. If you can't articulate your cost and performance data to your management as an enterprise data center operator, your days are numbered. The majority of the industry is paying lip service to green IT, but the IT departments need to step up and be accountable. DCIM, if you don't like my numbers, go talk to Andy. And look for the final results document. We'll publish this in the next month. We have literally hundreds of questions in this survey, dozens of different ways we're going to look at this data and cut the data to provide you an in-depth document. For those of you who read our document last year, I appreciate it. We're going to look at this from every angle, and it's going to be available to the people who took the survey first, and we'll be providing the folks who participated. I want to thank everyone who participated in this survey this year, and this data is going to be available. At this time, I'm going to take some questions and hopefully try to answer them effectively as possible. So, mic runners are going to be available, so if you've got questions, go ahead and raise your hand. Right here.
You know, one thing that might be skewing your DCIM number is that DCIM is such a broad thing. You know, there's dozens and dozens of aspects to it. So someone might say, yeah, I have this, but they just have this one little piece of it. And Andy might be looking at it in a more broad way.
Yeah, I agree. So one of the things that we did, though, with the survey was we used Andy's definition, because we'd heard the grief a couple of years in a row. So I used Andy's definition of the question. I said, DCIM we define as an enterprise-wide suite that you use to manage something across your entire data center. And it still leaves a lot of wiggle room. So is it one little piece of a software project, or but we said it can't be just your BMS, it can't just be Excel. You can't tell me that's a DCIM. And the adoption seems big, but we can talk more about it throughout the day. Rhonda Cierto is going to be talking about it, DCIM. Andy's going to talk about it. Kevin Heslin will have a panel of end users talking about DCIM on Thursday that you shouldn't miss. But yeah, that's a very good point.
Chris Johnston with Cisco. Just an anecdote to underwrite what you said about modular. We have a client in the Mideast who was having difficulties getting data centers built in what they considered an appropriate period of time. And these are large data centers. So they asked us to go out and speak to providers of modular. And we did to 3 providers, and we posed what would be needed in terms of how much capacity we needed the first shipment, second shipment, things of this nature. And the lead times were extraordinarily long, and the client said, shoot, even as slowly as we build data centers in the Mideast, we can build, stick build data centers quicker than we can wait on modular. And I think that's part of the problem is that we have capacity for small data center, 1, 2, 3. But when you talk about a really massive data center, the production capacity, it seems to me, is just not there.
Yeah, that's a great anecdote, and that was one of the big selling points, right? Is the speed of delivery. When we asked the people in the survey what's the driving it, speed delivery wasn't that high, but for some clients that has to be a big driver, is being able to get that fast. And if you can't get it fast, why do it? All right.
Shadi Makarici, Engineering Design Group. Any effort as a follow-up to the gentleman in front on standardization on DCIM level of services?
Oh, that's interesting. That would be a good question for Andy Lawrence and the team at 451 Research, and I'll bring them on stage here shortly, and we'll grill them. I have another question.
Hey, Matt.
Hello, sir.
On your definition of modular, was that all the way through the IT rooms, or did you stop in different areas on, say just MEP, or what was your definition of modular?
Our definition of modular was anything that could be from prefabricated, built offsite, and brought on-site. So it was anything from bringing capacity for cooling or power to the whole system in a box. The main kind of criteria for the survey was it had to be assembled offsite and delivered. I think I'm running out of time here. Maybe one more question, or are we tapped out? I'd like to call up Andy Lawrence. Andy Lawrence is going to speak today about we kind of give you the State of the Union, what we think the condition on the ground is today. Well, Now Andy's going to tell you what's going to be happening over the next 5 years, and I think this is going to be a really exciting presentation. I really like what Andy has to show. So please welcome Andy Lawrence.